This story happened many years ago in a small railroad settlement in North Dakota, near a lonely crossing surrounded by open fields and long stretches of empty road. Only a few houses stood there, built for railroad workers and their families. As a child, Hannah often stayed with her uncle to help around his place. He lived alone near the tracks, and there was always work to be done. She weeded the vegetable rows, fed the chickens, watered the garden, hauled buckets of water, and kept the wood stove burning through the cold nights. The chores were constant, but she didn't mind. What mattered most was the quiet. Her own parents drank heavily and filled their home with loud, unpredictable guests. Nights there were restless and tense. Laughter could turn into shouting without warning. Doors slammed, glasses shattered. Hannah learned to fall asleep while listening for danger. At her uncle's house, she could finally breathe. There she felt safe. Next door lived a large family. The father worked for the railroad, just like her uncle. His wife stayed home and raised their 5 children. They didn't have much, and they drank sometimes, but the family felt stable while the father was alive. Everything seemed to revolve around him. Then one day, he left on a work assignment and died unexpectedly. One day he was there, and the next he was gone. After that, the family began to unravel, as if he had been the only thing holding it together. The widow started drinking more heavily. Later, she took a maintenance job with the railroad, where she met a man who became her drinking companion after long shifts. The children were mostly left to themselves. Hannah spent time with them, but she grew especially close to Emily, the second oldest daughter. Whenever her uncle worked overnight shifts, Hannah invited Emily to stay over. It felt safer together. At night, they lay in the dark, whispering about their future, dreaming about graduating, about enrolling in community college in the nearest county town, about finally leaving their small settlement behind. They loved telling ghost stories, scaring themselves until they clutched each other in nervous laughter. One night, Emily spoke differently. Her voice was serious, almost trembling. She said something had been coming to their house at night. Something had been scratching along the porch, knocking against the siding and tapping on the windows. Then she pressed close to Hannah and began to cry. "I know it's my dad," she whispered. "I can feel it. He didn't die naturally. Someone killed him." Hannah felt a cold shiver run through her, but Emily kept talking. "He's not just wandering around. He's coming for someone. Soon he's going to take one of us with him. It's a bad sign." That conversation happened in April. In May, the girls were finishing 9th grade. They were preparing for exams and their graduation dance, dreaming about going to community college. On the night of their final school celebration, they decided to drive to a dance in a neighboring town. They curled their hair, put on makeup, slipped into high heels, and felt grown up and beautiful. It was too far to walk dressed like that, so a classmate offered to drive them on his father's motorcycle with a sidecar. Emily had long hair that reached below her waist, thick and heavy even when curled. She climbed into the sidecar, Hannah sat behind the driver, and they rode off. They were laughing, they were happy. Their whole lives seemed to be ahead of them. The wind lifted their hair as they sped down the road. Then, in a single instant, everything changed. Emily's hair was caught beneath the wheel. It wrapped tight. She was thrown from the sidecar. Her death was immediate. That was how her father took her with him. Hannah struggled deeply with her friend's death. One night, she dreamed of Emily, and the image never left her. In the dream, Emily crawled up from beneath a cellar hatch, bloodied and pale, reaching toward her as if trying to pull her away. For several nights, Hannah was afraid to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her friend again. Later, Hannah left for college, just as they had once planned together. During winter break, she returned to visit her uncle and learned that only one of the children from that family was still alive. Within 6 months, the mother and 3 of the siblings had died from different causes. People in the settlement whispered that the father had taken them all. That was the story. Megan's parents returned home late one evening from visiting friends. Her father, Daniel, went straight to bed, exhausted, and fell into a heavy sleep almost immediately. Her mother moved quietly around the kitchen, putting things away, trying to settle her thoughts. Not wanting to be in the way, Megan decided to watch television in the living room. She opened the door softly and froze. Her father was asleep on the couch, but beside him lay a naked woman with long black hair. The hair spilled down from the couch onto the floor and seemed to move slightly, as if stirred by an unseen draft. The woman's face was hidden in shadow, yet there was something deliberate in her stillness. It seemed as though her eyes were open, dark and endless. Megan slammed the door shut in terror. Her heart pounded wildly. She tried to convince herself it had been a trick of light, exhaustion, imagination. After a few seconds, she opened the door again. The couch was empty, except for her father, sleeping peacefully. There was no one else in the room. Megan said nothing and went to bed, though sleep did not come easily. The next morning, she gathered the courage to tell her mother what she had seen. They sat at the kitchen table over breakfast, while Megan described everything. She expected her mother to laugh and dismiss it. Instead, her mother's face turned pale, and fear flickered in her eyes. After listening carefully, she said that many years earlier, she had seen something very similar. When Megan's parents were newly married, they lived in an apartment owned by Daniel's mother. One evening, her mother-in-law left the front door slightly open while taking out the trash. Megan's mother was inside when she felt something rush past her and slip into the bedroom she shared with her husband. It was not a cat. It was not a person. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the faint outline of a woman moving slowly through the room. Terrified, she ran into the hallway and waited for her mother-in-law to return. The older woman also felt a strange draft pass by her and disappear into the apartment. Neither of them dared to go inside alone. They waited at a neighbor's place until Daniel came home. Together, they searched every corner of the apartment. Closets, cabinets, the balcony. Nothing was disturbed, but that night, Daniel woke with the sensation that someone was sitting on his chest, choking him. He tried to shout, to move, but he could not speak or lift his arms. Instead, he heard a hoarse sound and a low, mocking laugh. In the morning, he described the woman he had seen. Megan's mother recognized her immediately. It was the same figure she had glimpsed earlier. The attacks continued from time to time. Daniel grew thinner, weaker, more irritable. When Megan was born, the family moved into a company-provided apartment. Her mother hoped whatever haunted the old place would stay behind. But one morning, in the new apartment, she opened the bedroom door to call Daniel to breakfast. and saw the same naked woman with long black hair lying on her side of the bed, embracing him as he slept. She screamed his name and turned on the light. The room was empty. Later, Daniel's mother admitted that Megan's grandfather had once loved a woman named Elena. She herself had wanted him and had spread lies to ruin Elena's reputation so he would leave her. She comforted him afterward and eventually married him. Elena could not survive the betrayal and took her own life. Daniel was the exact image of his father. The grandfather died young under mysterious circumstances. He went to sleep one night and never woke up. After his death, it seemed as though Elena's spirit turned its attention to his son and followed him into his new home. And so jealousy and the desire to steal another woman's love led to tragedy, and to a family forced to share their home and even their bed with a restless ghost. Long ago, on the edge of a dense forest known as Blackwood Forest, there stood a small town called Raven Hollow, a quiet place that time seemed to have forgotten. And in the very center of that town stood an old house, a very old house, one that had been there for centuries. It was massive, built from thick stone walls that rose almost as high as a man. The windows were small and clouded with age, tangled with cobwebs, and the heavy wooden shutters groaned and creaked whenever the wind pushed through the narrow streets of the town. The people of Raven Hollow had lived there for generations, and they told many stories about the house. But they never spoke about it loudly. They spoke in whispers, as if the house itself might be listening. Some believed that spirits lived inside it, ancient spirits trapped within its walls for hundreds of years. Others said the house was cursed, and that anyone who dared to step inside would never return. Still, the house remained exactly where it had always been, silent, looming over the town, casting a long shadow with its eerie presence. One evening, a young couple named Ethan and Claire stumbled upon the house while walking through the forest. A storm had begun to roll in. The rain was growing heavier, the wind colder, and they were desperate to find shelter. When they saw the old mansion with its front door slightly open, it seemed like the perfect place to wait out the storm. To their surprise, despite its age, the house looked remarkably well preserved. Inside, the rooms were strangely clean, almost untouched by dust. The furniture was antique but sturdy, as if someone still cared for the place, or as if time itself had simply forgotten it. But the longer Ethan and Claire explored the house, the more uneasy they began to feel. The silence inside was overwhelming. Outside, the storm howled against the walls, rain hammered the windows. But within the house, there was almost no sound at all, except for the echo of their own footsteps slowly traveling through the long, twisting hallways. And little by little, they began to feel something unsettling. It felt as if the house was watching them, as if it could hear every step they took, every movement they made. When night finally fell, they tried to open the doors and windows, but something was wrong. The doors would not move. The windows refused to open. It was as if some invisible force was holding everything shut. They were trapped inside. The strange unease that had filled the air before now turned into something far worse, a waking nightmare. Hours passed, and then they began to hear the sounds. At first they were faint, almost impossible to notice. Whispers, distant footsteps, strange noises drifting from the dark corners of the house. Sometimes it sounded like someone walking down the hallway behind the walls. Sometimes it felt like someone standing just outside a closed door. The air itself seemed heavy with another presence, and that was when Ethan and Claire realized something terrifying. They were not alone in the house, and the spirits that had lived there for centuries were not happy to have visitors. Days passed, then nights, but no one in Raven Hollow ever saw the couple again. Some townspeople said the ghosts of the old house had taken them. Others believed the two had simply lost their minds, trapped alone among endless corridors and shadows. But the house still stands there to this day, silent, dark, unmoving, and no one in Raven Hollow dares to enter it anymore, because everyone knows it is a place where nightmares live, where old secrets breathe in the dark, and where the living should never return.